A single dad gets a wrong number text meant for someone else, but instead of deleting it, he replies. And what starts as a simple message turns into something that will change his and his daughter's lives forever. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? Michael slid the last wrench back into his toolbox, the clang echoing in the quiet of the garage. The air smelled of oil and metal, familiar, grounding. Outside, the winter wind rattled the overhead door, urging him to call it a night. He wiped his hands on a rag that had long since given up on being clean and glanced at the clock. Just after 9. Lily had finished her math homework at the shop's little break-room table, pencil gripped tight in her small hand as she counted aloud. She was curled up now in the worn recliner near the space heater, wrapped in a fleece blanket with cartoon animals and half asleep, her favorite book slipping from her fingers. "Time to go, sweetheart," Michael said softly, scooping her into his arms. She stirred but didn't wake, just buried her face in his jacket. He tucked her into the back seat of their old sedan, fastened her seatbelt, and started the engine. The heater coughed and sputtered before it gave in and started blowing warm air. As he waited for the windshield to defrost, his phone buzzed in the console cup holder. One new message. "Thinking of you. I miss you tonight." Michael stared at it, eyebrows raised. The words weren't for him. They couldn't be. His first instinct was to ignore it, delete it, let the moment pass. But something about it, so simple, so full of quiet longing, made him hesitate. After a moment he typed back, "Wrong number, but I hope they're worth missing." He hit send before he could overthink it. It wasn't much. Just a stranger's mistake, a digital hiccup. Still, it left him strangely awake. The windshield cleared. He put the car in gear and pulled onto the road, the night stretching out ahead in silence. Lily snored gently in the back seat, and Michael's thoughts drifted to nothing in particular, just the road, the cold, and the odd comfort of a message not meant for him. By the time they pulled into their driveway, the phone buzzed again. He didn't check it right away. He carried Lily inside, kissed her forehead, and tucked her into bed. Then, in the soft glow of the hallway light, he looked. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That was totally meant for someone else." And underneath it, "But thank you. That was unexpectedly kind." Michael stood in the doorway of Lily's room, watching her breathe, slow and even, beneath a tangle of blankets. Her nightlight glowed softly in the corner, casting long shadows across the walls. A worn stuffed bear sat tucked under her arm, the same one her mother had given her years ago. It always made Michael pause, just for a second. A memory, a ghost of something lost but still warm. He pulled the door mostly closed, leaving it cracked just enough to hear if she stirred. The old house creaked under the winter wind, pipes groaned, the familiar rhythm of home. He moved through the hallway quietly, not wanting to disturb the quiet peace of bedtime. Back in the living room, he sank into the lumpy couch with a soft grunt, his shoulders finally giving in to gravity. The TV was still on, muted, a late-night infomercial flashing promises in 2 bright colors. He didn't care. His mind wandered back to the message, that strange little blip in an otherwise ordinary night. He reached for his phone again, curiosity outweighing common sense. "Wrong number, but I hope they're worth missing." He read it once, twice, then hit send. Michael didn't expect a reply. He figured the stranger on the other end had realized their mistake and moved on, probably red-faced and embarrassed, cursing autocorrect or a missed digit. But not even 2 minutes later, the phone buzzed again. "You're kind and funny." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your night." Michael raised an eyebrow, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He typed back before he could talk himself out of it. "No harm done. You just added a little mystery to a guy's Tuesday night." There was a pause, then another buzz. "Well then, happy Tuesday, mystery guy," he chuckled softly, shaking his head. This wasn't how his evenings usually went, but something about the exchange, light, a little awkward, unexpected, felt strangely nice. He leaned back, phone resting on his chest, eyes drifting toward the ceiling. It wasn't much, but it was something. The reply came quicker than Michael expected. "Well then, happy Tuesday, mystery guy." He smiled again, unsure why it amused him so much. Maybe it was the playfulness, or the simple fact that someone out there was talking to him for no reason other than chance. It had been a long time since he'd had a conversation that wasn't about oil changes, school supplies, or the electric bill. He thumbed a response. "Do mystery guys usually get names?" A pause, then, "Fair point. I'm Rachel. Again, sorry for the accidental text. I was trying to message someone else. Long day. Fingers didn't cooperate." "No worries, Rachel. It was a nice break from fixing cars and fourth-grade math." Another pause, shorter this time. "You've got kids?" "One, Lily. She's 9, smart as a whip, terrible at fractions." "Sounds like a good team. I don't have kids, but I have a niece who thinks I'm uncool, so I can relate maybe." Michael chuckled quietly, stretching out on the couch, the phone warm in his hand. He could almost picture her now, whoever she was, sitting in her own quiet corner of the world, texting some guy she didn't know because neither of them had planned on it, and yet here they were. "So, big mix-up aside, are you okay?" he typed. Another beat of silence before she responded. "Honestly, no, not really. I had one of those days where everything I said felt wrong, everything I did felt pointless, and I ended up texting the one person I probably shouldn't have, except it wasn't him, it was you." Michael read her words slowly. She didn't feel like a stranger now, not entirely. "Well, for what it's worth, you've got good aim. I don't mind being texted by someone honest." A minute passed before her reply lit up the screen. "I think I needed to hear that more than I knew." Michael sat there for a long moment staring at her message. He didn't know Rachel. He didn't know what her life looked like or where she sat as she typed those words, but something in his chest shifted, a soft click, like something settling into place. And suddenly it didn't feel so much like a wrong number anymore. The days that followed fell into a new kind of rhythm. Mornings were still chaos, Lily rushing to find mismatched socks, Michael scrambling to pack lunches with whatever was left in the fridge. The garage still demanded long hours and grease-streaked hands, and the bills still waited in quiet, threatening piles on the kitchen table. But nights? Nights had changed. Once Lily was tucked into bed with her favorite book, The Secret Zoo, for the 5th time, Michael would settle on the couch, phone in hand. Almost on cue, he'd wait just a moment, and without fail, the screen would light up. "Today I spilled coffee on my boss's desk during a pitch meeting, so I'm officially a legend." Michael grinned. "Bold strategy. I respect it. Did you at least win them over?" "Miraculously, yes. Either I'm very persuasive, or they were too stunned to object. Or maybe you're just good at what you do." She didn't reply to that one right away, and he wondered if he'd pushed too far. But then, "That's actually really nice to hear. Thank you." Their exchanges didn't always stay light. Sometimes Rachel asked about Lily, about what it was like raising a daughter alone, and sometimes Michael asked about the city, what it felt like to live in a place where buildings blocked the stars. He didn't tell her everything, not yet, but he found himself wanting to. And that feeling, that slow, surprising desire to share pieces of his day with someone who wasn't Lily, unnerved him, in a good way. One night, after a particularly long day, Michael texted her while folding laundry. "Lily says hi. She wanted to tell you she got an A on her spelling test and ate 2 helpings of broccoli, which apparently makes her a grown-up." Rachel's reply came fast. "Tell Lily I'm deeply impressed. I only just learned to tolerate broccoli in my 30s." Michael laughed, out loud. It echoed in the quiet house in a way that felt new. That night, before bed, Lily asked, "Did the phone lady text you again?" Michael nodded, brushing her hair back gently. "Yeah, she did." "She's nice," Lily mumbled sleepily. "You smile more now." Michael paused, then whispered, "Yeah, I guess I do." It was just after 10 when Rachel's message came through that night. Michael had just finished washing dishes, the house dim and quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old floorboards. He dried his hands on a dish towel and picked up his phone, expecting another funny one-liner or story from her chaotic office life. But this time her message was different. "Can I tell you something kind of stupid?" Michael sat down on the couch, curiosity stirring. "Only if I get to decide whether it's actually stupid." There was a pause, then, "Some days I feel like I'm doing everything right, and still losing. I have the job I used to dream about, big office, people who listen when I speak, a view of the skyline that makes tourists stop and take pictures, and yet half the time I want to pack a bag and disappear." Michael stared at the screen, letting her words settle. He knew the feeling, not the skyline, not the office, but the quiet ache of doing everything you thought you were supposed to and still feeling empty. Doesn't sound stupid. Sounds like someone who's been running too hard for too long. "Yeah," she wrote. "That's exactly what it feels like. I go to meetings and talk strategy and pitch to people in suits, and at the end of the day, I come home and wonder what any of it really means." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he imagined her somewhere high above a city that never stopped moving, with too many lights and not enough quiet. He imagined her heels kicked off, her dinner uneaten, her face lit only by the glow of her phone. "Maybe you're not losing," he typed. "Maybe you're just noticing that the things you thought would matter don't, not the way real things do." Another pause, then, "What are the real things, Michael?" He smiled at the question. A kid's laughter, the smell of a garage in winter, someone remembering how you take your coffee, a text from the wrong person at the right time. When she finally replied, her message was short. "Thank you. That made me cry a little, in a good way." Michael leaned back, phone resting against his chest. Somewhere far away, a stranger he hadn't meant to meet was slowly becoming something else entirely. It was late when the conversation turned quiet, not in the way texts slow when someone's distracted, but in that careful way people get when they're circling something hard to say. Rachel had just sent a picture of a half-eaten cupcake with a caption that read, "Office birthday party for someone I've never spoken to. I took 2. Judge me." Michael laughed under his breath and typed back, "Stealing cupcakes is an act of survival. No judgment here." Then, after a minute, another message followed. "You always make it sound like your days are full, but you never really talk about the people in them." Michael stared at her words longer than he expected to. She wasn't prying. He could tell. It was just a gentle observation, honest, thoughtful. He took a slow breath, leaning forward, elbows on knees. Then he typed, "There used to be someone." There was a pause on her end, then, "I'm listening." And so he told her. Her name was Erin. We met in high school, got married at 22. She was the loud one, the one who made friends with strangers in grocery store lines and cried at movie trailers. We had Lily a few years later. He stopped, fingers hovering above the screen. Part of him wanted to delete it, shrink back into the safe, surface-level banter they'd grown used to. But he kept going. She got sick, breast cancer. We fought it hard, but it took her 3 years ago, just after Lily turned 6. The blinking cursor waited. Then Rachel replied, slow and careful, "I'm so sorry, Michael. I didn't know. I can't imagine." He nodded to himself, even though she couldn't see. "It's okay. Most days I don't even know how we got through it. I had to keep going. For Lily. She needed normal. I gave everything I had to give, and some days it still didn't feel like enough." After a moment, another message came through. It is. I can tell." Michael stared at her words, something thick building in his throat. It wasn't pity, not from her. It was respect. It was grace. "Thank you," he typed simply, "for letting me say it out loud." And, for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel quite so alone. The texts became part of the routine before Michael even realized it. like coffee in the morning or brushing snow off the windshield, something small but necessary. Each day started the same way now. Michael would wake to the sound of his alarm, groggily reach for his phone, and find a message already waiting. Morning, from the land of overpriced coffee and underwhelming weather. What's it like out there in small-town USA? Sometimes it was a photo of her subway commute, blurry and gray. Other times, just a quick line about the day ahead. Meetings, deadlines, someone microwaving fish in the break room. He'd respond while pouring Lily's cereal. Cloudy with a chance of cranky 9-year-old, she says socks are a form of oppression today. Rachel never missed a beat. Clearly a revolutionary in the making. Fight the power, Lily. By mid-morning, he might get a meme or a quote she saw taped to a cafe window. At lunch, she'd ask what he was working on. Sometimes he'd send a picture of an engine in pieces or grease on his hands. She always seemed genuinely interested. You talk about cars like they're people, she'd written once. Some of them act like it, he replied. Their messages weren't constant. Life still came first, but they were steady, a thread running through the fabric of his day. They shared stories, old memories, harmless flirtation that made his chest feel light. Once she sent a photo of the skyline at dusk and wrote, "Tell me you wouldn't miss this just a little." Michael responded with a shot of the sun setting behind the garage, all orange and gold over the rooftops. "Tell me you wouldn't trade it." He didn't know what this was becoming. A friendship, sure, maybe more, maybe nothing. But it made his days feel less quiet, less heavy. And at night, after Lily was asleep and the world grew still again, he'd sit back, phone in hand, and wait for that familiar vibration. A name he hadn't expected, a connection he hadn't looked for, and now couldn't imagine going without. It started with a photo of a crayon drawing, a crooked house, a stick-figured dad with big ears, and a little girl with wild yellow hair standing under a too-big sun. At the bottom, scrawled in pink marker, were the words, "Me and Daddy and Pancake Day." Michael sent it with no caption, just the image. Rachel's reply came a minute later. "I love this. The sun has serious main character energy." He chuckled, leaning back in the garage's worn office chair. She insisted on making the pancakes herself this morning. I supervised, but syrup was everywhere. "Worth it," Rachel wrote. "That's a masterpiece." From then on, photos became part of the rhythm. Michael would send snapshots of small, quiet things. Lily's drawings taped proudly to the fridge, a particularly stubborn bolt on an old truck engine, the dent in the fender of their faded blue sedan that Lily had once decorated with star stickers to make it prettier. Rachel, in turn, shared glimpses of a world so far removed from his it felt like another planet. A shot of her sleek black coffee cup resting on the edge of a high-rise balcony. The glass and steel skyline behind it glittered in the early morning light. "Fuel for another day of corporate nonsense," she'd written. Another day, she sent a photo of a bookstore window filled with fairy lights and old novels, captioned, "Found your kind of place in the middle of mine." Michael replied with a picture of the dusty corner of the garage where he kept a second-hand bookshelf, manuals, some paperbacks, and a battered copy of Charlotte's Web Lily insisted he read at least twice a year. The distance between their worlds remained, but through the lens of their phones it began to shrink. There was something intimate about sharing what your eyes saw first, the ordinary things you might not think to describe. A coffee cup, a child's drawing, the sun through a dirty garage window, little pieces of life traded like postcards from parallel lives neither of them had expected to matter. And yet they did. More and more. Michael was folding laundry on the couch when Lily padded in barefoot, holding her latest drawing like it was a prized treasure. She plopped beside him, her legs swinging off the edge. "Did the phone lady text you today?" she asked casually, but with that unmistakable gleam of curiosity in her eyes. Michael raised an eyebrow. "Rachel? Yeah. Why?" Lily shrugged, trying and failing to look disinterested. "Just wondering. You smile at your phone when she texts, like a lot. Michael laughed, shaking his head. You've been spying on me. I'm observant, she corrected. Big difference. She held up her drawing, a picture of a woman in a red dress standing next to a little girl and a man with messy brown hair. Over their heads floated a speech bubble. Hi, Rachel. Michael smiled. Is that supposed to be you, me, and Rachel? Lily grinned proudly. Yep. Can you send it to her? He hesitated for only a second before snapping a quick picture. He added a message. Lily wanted you to have this. She says hi. Rachel's reply came almost immediately. I'm honored. Please tell Lily this is going on my fridge, front and center. Michael read it aloud and Lily beamed. She liked it? She loved it. Lily leaned her head on his arm, her voice softer now. Do you think she'd like a video? I could show her my book fort. Michael smiled gently. You want to send her a video? Only if she wants one, Lily said, already hopping up to grab his phone. Moments later, Rachel received a video of Lily standing proudly in the living room beside a slightly leaning fortress of books and pillows. Hi, Rachel. I made a book fort, and Daddy says it won't fall unless we sneeze too loud. Bye. Rachel replied with a short video of her own, smiling into the camera, city lights twinkling behind her. Hi, Lily. Your fort is amazing. I think you and your dad are professional fort architects. I'll try to make one too, but don't laugh if it's bad, okay? Lily giggled as she watched it, eyes wide. She's really nice. Michael watched her, something quiet blooming in his chest. For the first time in a long while, someone was reaching not just for him, but for them both. And Lily, all heart and honesty, was reaching back. The engine gave out with a loud clunk, just as Michael was pulling into the grocery store parking lot. Smoke hissed up from under the hood, and the steering wheel stiffened in his hands. He coasted the beat-up sedan into an empty space and killed the ignition, already feeling the weight settle in his chest. Lily looked up from the back seat, her coloring book in her lap. Did the car make a scary noise? Michael forced a smile. Yeah, it's just having a little tantrum. He popped the hood, knowing exactly what he'd find before the smoke even cleared. A cracked hose, coolant leaking out like a slow betrayal. He sighed, wiping his hands on his jeans, more out of habit than hope. Back home that night, after getting the car towed and Lily tucked into bed, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at the repair estimate. It wasn't the worst he'd ever seen, but it was more than he had sitting in his checking account. His phone buzzed. Rachel, how's your night going? He stared at the screen for a beat, then typed, let's just say the car decided today was the day to fall apart. Not the best timing. Her reply came quickly. Want me to cover it? Michael blinked at the screen, then shook his head, a little smile tugging at the corner of his mouth despite the stress. No, but thanks. Really, I've got it. Just need to move some things around. There was a pause, then, okay, I had to ask, but I won't push. I know, he wrote. That's why I didn't get mad. Rachel sent back a heart emoji, then a second message. Still proud of you, though, even if you won't let me play hero. He exhaled, shoulders dropping slightly. She wasn't trying to fix him. She just wanted to be there. And somehow, that meant more. He looked over at Lily's shoes drying near the heater, still damp from the walk home. They'd be fine. They always found a way. Still, knowing someone out there was willing to catch them, even if he wouldn't let her, made the night feel a little less heavy. Michael stared at the name on his screen, thumb hovering over the green button. Rachel was calling, not texting, calling. He hesitated. It wasn't that he didn't want to talk, he did, maybe more than he'd admit. But texting had a kind of safety to it. You could pause, rewrite, hide behind the glow of the screen. A phone call felt exposed. The phone buzzed again, and this time he tapped accept. Hello? There was a soft laugh on the other end, nervous and breathy. Hey, it's me, Rachel. I figured I'd be brave and, Use my voice." Michael smiled despite himself. "So you're real after all." "I've been wondering the same about you," she said. "Your texts make you seem suspiciously charming. I had to verify." He leaned back into the couch, relaxing bit by bit. "Well, if this is a scam call, it's the friendliest one I've ever gotten." She laughed again, and it settled something in him. That laugh. It wasn't polished like the city or tired like the garage. It was honest. They talked about small things at first: the weather, her botched attempt at making soup from scratch, Lily's latest obsession with knock-knock jokes. There were pauses, some long, some awkward, but none of them felt uncomfortable, just full, like both of them were quietly marveling at how easy it was to just exist together, even in silence. "I almost didn't call," she admitted. "I was afraid it would ruin whatever this is." Michael glanced at the ceiling, searching for words. "I get that, but hearing your voice, it feels good, familiar somehow." Rachel was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Same." They stayed on the line longer than either had planned, long after the jokes ran dry and the sky outside turned dark enough to forget the hour. It wasn't about what they said anymore. It was about hearing breath on the other end, proof that someone was there. When they finally said goodnight, it wasn't dramatic or drawn out. Just a quiet promise, spoken like a secret neither of them wanted to name just yet. "Talk soon?" "Yeah," Michael said. "Definitely." The sky was overcast, the kind of heavy gray that made everything feel slower. Michael stood in front of the small headstone, hands buried deep in the pockets of his jacket, the cold seeping through anyway. The grass beneath his boots was brittle with frost, and a single wilted daisy lay where Lily had placed it earlier, insisting they bring something pretty, not sad. He didn't say much. He never did. Just stood there, shifting from foot to foot, letting the silence wrap around him. It had been 3 years. Somehow, that made it harder, not easier. Grief had settled in like an old tenant, quiet but ever present. "She would have been 35 today," he said aloud, though no one was listening but the wind. "Lily made you a card, drew a unicorn on it, because apparently unicorns fix everything." His phone buzzed in his pocket, a single vibration that felt out of place in the stillness. For a moment, he thought about ignoring it, but habit won. "Rachel, I know today's hard. I don't know the right words, but I've been thinking about you." He stared at the screen, fingers numb. He hadn't told her it was Erin's birthday until last night, and even then it had felt strange, unfair somehow, to pull Rachel into that part of his life. A few seconds later, another message appeared. "She must have been incredible. You still are." Michael swallowed hard. His breath came out in a shaky cloud. No one had ever said it like that before, not with such clarity, such grace. People usually changed the subject or fumbled for platitudes, but Rachel didn't try to fix it. She just saw him, where he was, as he was, and chose to stay. He typed back slowly, "Thank you. I needed that more than I thought I would." She didn't respond right away, and he didn't expect her to. The moment wasn't about filling silence, it was about being allowed to feel it. As he turned to leave, he looked back at the grave one more time. "Still figuring it out," he whispered, "but I've got help now." And for the first time in a long time, he didn't walk away feeling quite so alone. Michael was halfway through scraping ice off the garage's back door when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He let out a breath, watching it fog in the cold air, then fished out the phone with one gloved hand. A message from Rachel lit up the screen. "Check your email. Thought you could use a little something to warm up." Curious, he wiped the screen clear with his sleeve and opened the message. A $10 gift card to a nearby coffee shop blinked back at him, bright and cheerful, with the subject line, "Surprise fuel for the world's best mechanic and dad." He blinked, stunned for a moment, not because of the amount, but because of the gesture. It was unexpected, unprompted, and it had his name on it. A smile tugged at his lips. He texted her back, "You didn't have to do that." "I know," she wrote, "but I wanted to." It took him a moment to respond, not because he didn't know what to say, but because it had been a long time since someone had just given something to him. Not out of obligation or guilt, but simply because they thought he deserved it. He wasn't used to that. He was the one who fixed things, bought groceries, packed lunches, stretched dollars. Giving was routine. Receiving, especially something so thoughtful, felt foreign. He texted again. "Thank you. I mean it. That made my whole morning." Rachel replied with a heart and a coffee cup emoji. Simple. No pressure. No expectation. An hour later, Michael stood in line at the little cafe down the street from the garage, the gift card pulled up on his phone. The barista smiled as she handed him the drink. Black coffee, no frills. Back at the shop, he sipped it slowly between repairs, the warmth of it seeping into more than just his hands. It wasn't the coffee that had him walking a little lighter, though. It was the reminder that someone out there thought of him, without asking, without needing anything in return, just because. The snow started falling just after sunrise, thick, silent flakes drifting from the sky like the world had turned down the volume. By noon, it had covered everything in a soft, white hush. The town shut down in slow motion. School canceled, roads closed, the garage doors never even opened. Michael stood at the window with a mug of lukewarm coffee, watching Lily press her face to the glass. "Can we go outside now?" she asked for the third time. He glanced at the driveway, already blanketed in 6 inches of powder. Boots, gloves, scarf, hat, the works. 10 minutes later, they were bundled up and trudging through the front yard, Lily bouncing with energy, her arms sticking out like a puffy snowman in progress. "We're making a fort," she declared, "the biggest one ever." Michael followed her lead, helping pack snow into walls and shaping makeshift bricks with an old plastic bin. They worked side by side, their laughter echoing down the quiet street. For a few hours, the world was just snow angels and mittens and frost-nipped noses. When they finally sat inside the half-finished snow fort, breathless and red-cheeked, Michael pulled out his phone and snapped a picture. Lily grinning wide, a carrot sticking out of the wall like a periscope. He texted it to Rachel. "Snow day masterpiece. Lily says it's a fortress of imagination and slightly cold toes." Her reply came almost instantly, along with a photo of her own, a hand holding a mug of cocoa topped with whipped cream and cinnamon. "Official fort reward, sending hot cocoa vibes your way." A few minutes later, his phone buzzed again, a digital gift card for the local market. "Emergency cocoa fund," Rachel wrote. "I take snow fort construction very seriously." Michael shook his head, smiling. He turned to Lily. "Guess what? Rachel just sent cocoa reinforcements." Lily gasped, delighted. "Can we get marshmallows too?" He nodded. "I think we'd better." That night, as snow piled high outside and the fire crackled low in the hearth, Michael and Lily sipped cocoa under a blanket while Rachel texted photos of her own snowless city, admitting she was jealous. And for the first time in a long time, the storm outside felt like something to savor, not survive. Michael was finishing up the dishes when the message came through. The house was quiet, Lily tucked into bed, the hum of the heater filling the space like a low, steady breath. He dried his hands, reached for his phone without thinking, and saw Rachel's name. "Maybe it's crazy, but I'd like to meet." He froze. Just 7 words, but they carried more weight than anything she'd said before. He read it twice, then a third time, like the meaning might change if he looked at it long enough. It didn't. A knot formed in his stomach, not fear, not quite. More like the edge of something sharp and unfamiliar, the kind of moment you feel before stepping into a room where everything might change. He sat on the edge of the couch, thumbs hovering over the screen. They'd been talking for weeks now, texts, photos, the late-night call that had lingered in his thoughts longer than he admitted. Rachel had gone from a stranger to a comfort, A soft place in the day he hadn't known he needed. But meeting? That was real. That was different. He thought of Lily, of the way her face lit up when Rachel sent a video or how she asked about her like she was already part of their life. Michael had let Rachel in, but through glass, through words. A screen was safe. Seeing her meant letting her see him, all of him. He ran a hand through his hair, then finally typed, "I'd like that too. I just need a minute. It's a lot." Her reply didn't take long. "Of course, I get it. No pressure. I just couldn't keep pretending I didn't want to." Michael exhaled, head tilted back against the couch. He admired her honesty. It was one of the first things that had drawn him in. And part of him already knew the answer. It had been forming quietly in the spaces between texts and laughter and snow forts. He wasn't afraid to meet her. He was afraid of what it might mean if he wanted her to stay. The road stretched out in front of her like a ribbon pulled tight across the open sky. Rachel gripped the steering wheel a little harder than necessary, her fingers flexing as mile markers ticked by. The farther she drove, the more the skyline faded behind her, replaced by rolling hills and bare trees, and the occasional rusted tractor left to weather in the fields. She had triple-checked the directions, packed her overnight bag 3 times, left her apartment spotless, like she might never return. And now, as she passed a hand-painted sign that read, "Welcome to Maplewood, slow down and stay a while," her stomach twisted. What am I doing? She'd asked herself that a dozen times, but each time the answer came back quieter, steadier. You're showing up. For once, you're showing up. Meanwhile, Michael stood at the edge of his driveway, the worn gravel crunching beneath his boots. He kept checking his watch, though he knew it wasn't helping. Lily was at a friend's house, her idea, complete with a backpack and a whispered, "So you won't be nervous, Daddy." He was nervous anyway. He'd mowed the yard, even though the grass didn't need it, cleaned the house like someone might perform an inspection, changed his shirt twice. The truth was, nothing he did could prepare him for this moment. Rachel wasn't just a voice in the dark anymore, or a warm name lighting up his phone. She was coming here, to him. When her car finally pulled up, a dusting of gravel kicked up behind it. He almost didn't move. For a second, he just stood there, hands shoved in his pockets, watching her step out. She looked exactly like her pictures, maybe a little smaller, maybe a little more real. Her hair was pulled back, and she wore a simple coat, but her smile was unmistakable, tentative, hopeful. "Hey," she said. "Hey, Pa," he replied, his voice rougher than he intended. There was a moment, awkward, suspended, where they both just looked at each other, like they were trying to stitch the pieces together from screen to skin, and then, finally, Michael stepped forward. "You made it." Rachel nodded, her smile softening. "Yeah, I did." For a moment they just stood there, the sound of the idling car fading into the hush of small-town quiet. The wind tugged at Rachel's coat, her hair catching on her lip as she pushed it back with a nervous laugh. Michael shifted his weight from one foot to the other, suddenly unsure of what to do with his hands. It wasn't that she didn't look like her photos, she did. But there was something about seeing her in real time, in real space, that made his throat tighten. She was no longer a voice in his ear or a name glowing on his phone screen. She was a person standing on his gravel driveway, blinking into the sun and smiling, like she wasn't quite sure whether to be nervous or excited. "Hi," she said again, quieter this time. "Hey," Michael repeated, then chuckled under his breath. "Guess we've used up all our good words in text." Rachel laughed too, her shoulders relaxing just a bit. We probably peaked at snow fort jokes. Hard to top snow forts. They stood there in the gentle awkwardness of two people stepping out of the safety of conversation and into the risk of presence. Michael scratched at the back of his neck. "You want to come in?" he asked. "I've got coffee and maybe leftover spaghetti, depending on how adventurous you're feeling." Rachel grinned. "I didn't drive all this way to turn down spaghetti." He led her toward the house, and for a few steps the silence between them was comfortable. Then, at the porch, he glanced over. unsure of what came next. A hug, a handshake, something in between? Rachel saved him the trouble. She stepped close and gently touched his arm. "It's okay. This feels weird and good and kind of unreal, but I'm glad I'm here." Michael looked down at her, meeting her eyes for the first time without pixels between them. "Me too," he said, and meant it. And then, without thinking too much, they smiled. Small, real, a little surprised. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And that was more than enough. The smell of pancakes filled the kitchen, mingling with the faint scent of syrup and something vaguely burnt. Lily stood on her step stool at the stove, wielding a spatula like a tiny general, her face serious beneath a mess of bedhead curls. Michael hovered nearby, pretending not to worry about her flipping technique. Rachel sat at the table, cradling a mug of coffee, trying to keep a straight face as Lily narrated each step of her pancake plan. "First, you wait till the bubbles show up, like a lot of bubbles. Then you flip it, but not too fast or it'll splat. Daddy did that once. It hit the wall." Michael shot Rachel a look. "Traitor." Rachel grinned. "Noted. Avoid wall pancakes." Lily beamed at her, clearly pleased. "You can have the first one I made. It's kind of shaped like a heart, if you squint." "I love it already," Rachel said, accepting the slightly lopsided pancake like it was a gift from royalty. She took a bite, exaggerated a happy sigh, and gave Lily 2 thumbs up. Michael couldn't help but watch the two of them, the way Lily, who was usually shy with strangers, leaned against Rachel's shoulder while pointing at the Paw Patrol episode playing faintly in the living room. The way Rachel laughed at Lily's pancake commentary like she'd been part of Saturday mornings forever. It was strange and comforting, like a door he didn't realize had been closed was suddenly cracked open. After breakfast, they all ended up on the floor in the living room, Lily dragging every throw pillow into a makeshift nest, while the animated puppies saved another cartoon town. Rachel sat cross-legged, syrup still on her plate, her hand unconsciously reaching out to tuck a loose curl behind Lily's ear. Michael watched from the armchair, coffee cooling in his hand, a quiet warmth settling in his chest. It wasn't just that Rachel fit in, it was how naturally she did. No hesitation, no forced smiles, just ease. He met her eyes over the top of Lily's head. She smiled. No words were exchanged, but the message was clear. This wasn't just a visit. It was the start of something real. The garage smelled like oil and metal and something warm Michael called honest work, though Rachel couldn't quite place it. She stood just inside the open bay door, sleeves rolled, hair pulled into a low ponytail, watching as Michael wiped his hands on a rag and leaned over the open hood of a beat-up pickup. "This one's a classic," he said without looking up. "Not because it's old, but because it keeps pretending it's not broken." Rachel smirked. "Sounds like my last relationship." He laughed, straightened, and glanced over at her. "You sure you're okay hanging around here? It's not exactly glamorous." "I don't need glamorous," she said, taking a slow look around. "I wanted to see your world. This is it, right?" Michael nodded once. "Yeah, this is it." Throughout the morning, Rachel followed him from station to station, watching him work with the kind of precision and quiet focus that came from years of doing something because you had to, and then, eventually, because you loved it. She saw how the regulars greeted him, how he remembered names, stories, even the sound of an engine before it fully turned over. There was respect here, not flashy, not loud, but earned. A customer came in with a flat tire, flustered and late for work. Michael reassured her, got it changed in record time, and when she realized she'd forgotten her wallet, he just waved it off. "Pay me next time," he said, "or bring cookies." Rachel watched the exchange, something catching in her throat. Back in the city, favors came with strings. Here, they came with smiles and trust. Later, when they took a break outside by the shop's old vending machine, Rachel leaned against the wall and looked at him. "You built all of this," she said. "Not just the garage, this life. You made it with your hands." Michael shrugged. Didn't have much choice. That's what makes it more impressive. He looked at her then, the kind of look that saw through polished words and boardroom titles. It's not fancy, but it's mine. Rachel smiled softly. It's more than enough. And in that moment, she wasn't the visitor anymore, she was someone who understood. The sun dipped low behind the rooftops, casting a soft amber glow over the quiet streets of Maplewood. Rachel walked beside Michael, their shoulders occasionally brushing, as they strolled past shuttered storefronts and sleepy front porches. A breeze tugged at her coat, and she pulled it tighter, more out of habit than chill. "This place gets quiet early," she said, her voice low and a little amused. Michael nodded. "Yeah, you can hear yourself think here. It's a blessing, or a curse, depending on the day." They passed a park bench near the library, its paint chipped, the wood worn smooth from years of use. Rachel slowed, then stopped, gesturing. "Mind if we sit a minute?" Michael shook his head. "Not at all." They sat in silence at first, the kind that had grown comfortable between them, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Michael glanced at her, noting the way she twisted her fingers together, something flickering behind her usual calm. "I haven't really told you about Josh," she said suddenly, her voice tight. Michael didn't speak, just waited. "We were together for 3 years, lived together, thought we'd get married at one point." She exhaled, eyes fixed on a spot across the street. He was charming, smart, knew all the right words, but they never quite reached his actions, you know? Michael nodded once. "Yeah, I do. I kept making excuses for him, told myself I was being too sensitive, too demanding, but the truth is I was shrinking, bit by bit. Until one day I didn't recognize myself in the mirror." She let out a quiet laugh. "I left on a Tuesday. I remember because I had a meeting that morning, pretended everything was normal, and then I packed up and never looked back." Michael didn't say anything right away. He just looked at her, not with pity, but with quiet understanding. Finally, he said, "That takes guts." Rachel blinked, surprised by the simplicity of it, the honesty. He didn't try to fix it, didn't offer cliches or try to make her feel better. He just heard her, and in that still moment, beneath the fading light, something settled between them, unspoken but undeniable. A spark, small, steady, real. The smell of garlic bread and roasted chicken drifted through the house, warm and familiar, like the kind of comfort that didn't ask for attention, but gave it anyway. Michael stood at the stove, stirring green beans in a battered skillet, while keeping one ear on Lily, who was busily setting the table with her usual chaotic flair. "Forks go on the left, right?" she called from the dining room. "Yes, unless you're planning to rewrite centuries of etiquette," he called back. "I might," she answered, her voice full of pride. Rachel appeared in the doorway just then, holding a bakery box and smiling sheepishly. "I come bearing pie. It's not homemade, but the guy behind the counter swore it was award-winning." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Is the award just most sugar per slice?" "Possibly." I didn't ask too many questions. She stepped into the kitchen, placing the box on the counter before leaning against it, watching him work. "This already smells better than any takeout I've had in months." "That's a low bar," he teased, though his chest warmed at the compliment. "Still true." Dinner was simple, but it didn't feel small. Lily chattered about school and the fort she was rebuilding in the living room, and Rachel listened with genuine interest, laughing at her stories, asking questions, passing the rolls like she'd been doing it for years. When Lily accidentally knocked over her glass, Rachel didn't flinch. She just grabbed a napkin and helped clean it up, saying, "I was a world-class spiller at your age. You've got competition." Michael watched the exchange, something quiet and full-blooming behind his ribs. There was no awkwardness, no forced gestures, just 3 people, eating, talking, being. And somehow, in the glow of the kitchen light and the clink of silverware, it all felt right. After dinner, Lily insisted Rachel stay for a slice of her official pie review, and Rachel obliged, pretending to take notes, like a food critic. As Michael gathered the plates and Lily leaned against Rachel's side, drowsy from a full belly and too many giggles, he paused. There was space at the table, and for the first time in a long time, someone filled it. It was meant to be a weekend, 2 nights, maybe 3. Just a visit, she'd said, a short escape from the city. But by Sunday morning, Rachel stood in Michael's kitchen, barefoot and yawning, pouring coffee like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I called in," she said, eyes still heavy with sleep. Michael looked up from where he was tying Lily's shoes. "Called in?" She nodded. "Told them I'd be working remotely for a few days. I have a laptop, Wi-Fi, and more peace here than I've had in months. Figured I'd stay a little longer, if that's okay." He froze for just a moment, unsure what to say. A part of him wanted to grin like a kid, to say yes without hesitation, but another part, the more cautious, weathered one, tugged at the reins. The part that remembered how quickly things could disappear. "Yeah," he said carefully. "It's okay." Lily, however, didn't hold back. "Yes," she cheered, arms in the air. "That means you can come to my class lunch on Tuesday. We're doing a poetry thing, and I wrote one about our snow fort." Rachel blinked, touched. "You want me to come?" "Of course," Lily said. "You're basically part of the team now." Michael looked at Rachel then, really looked. She was smiling at Lily, one hand resting on the kitchen counter, her eyes soft and a little surprised, like she hadn't expected to be wanted so easily, so openly. Later, as Lily disappeared into the living room, trailing construction paper and crayons, Michael stepped beside Rachel at the sink. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly. She turned toward him, her expression unreadable but calm. "I don't do things halfway, Michael. I'm not just here for the snow or the pie. I'm here because I want to be." He nodded slowly, but didn't say the thing he was thinking, that wanting was the hardest part, that letting himself hope again felt like trying to breathe underwater. But she stayed, through the day, into the evening, and every moment after that she kept staying. The email came just after breakfast. Rachel's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter as Lily stacked jelly packets into a tiny tower, and Michael flipped pancakes with the kind of practiced ease that made it look like a second language. Rachel read the subject line, "Urgent campaign rollout timeline change," and her stomach dipped. She opened it, eyes scanning words that confirmed what she already suspected. The break was over. She set the phone down face down, pressing her lips together. Michael glanced over from the stove. "Work?" She nodded. "They've moved the launch up. Meetings start Thursday. I need to be back by tomorrow night." There was a pause. Lily didn't seem to notice, still narrating her jelly engineering, but the air shifted, just slightly. Michael didn't ask her to stay. He didn't joke, didn't plead, didn't even hesitate. He just turned back to the skillet and said, "Then you'd better get a head start. Roads'll be worse the longer you wait." It was kind, too kind, and that's what made it hurt. Rachel sat down slowly, fingers curling around the mug of coffee she'd barely touched. "I don't want to go." "I know." She looked at him, wanting, hoping for something more. But he didn't meet her eyes. He kept flipping pancakes, one after the other, stacking them neatly like it didn't matter. "You're not going to stop me, are you?" she asked quietly. He finally looked at her then. There was no anger in his face, no coldness, just something resigned and raw beneath the surface. "No," he said, "because if I did and you stayed, there's a chance you'd regret it. And I couldn't carry that. I've had someone leave before. I couldn't bear being the reason you stayed when you didn't want to." Rachel swallowed hard. She reached out, fingers brushing his on the counter. "That's not fair, you know." Michael smiled faintly, eyes tired. "Maybe not, but it's honest." And there in the middle of a warm kitchen that had felt like home just yesterday, Rachel felt the pull of two worlds, the life she'd built and the one she never meant to find. The suitcase sat by the door like a silent goodbye, zipped tight and too full for a visit that was supposed to be temporary. Rachel stood beside it, coat on, keys in hand, her smile soft and forced at the edges. Outside, the car engine hummed, already warming against the cold. Lily clung to her around the waist, small fingers clutching the fabric of Rachel's coat, like letting go might make it real. "Do you have to go?" she whispered, voice wobbly. Rachel knelt to her level, brushing a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "Just for a little while," she said gently. "You still have to show me your next snow fort, and your class poem, and how to make pancakes that don't look like ghosts." Lily didn't laugh. Her eyes welled up, and when the first tear slid down her cheek, Rachel pulled her into a hug that felt too short, too final. Michael stood a few steps back, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. He wasn't sure what to say, whether thank you or please stay or something in between. But the words lodged somewhere deep, behind a wall built out of every goodbye he'd already lived through. Rachel looked up at him as she rose. "I'll call when I get there." He nodded. "Let me know if the roads are bad." Another beat of silence stretched between them. "You know," she said quietly, "I didn't plan for any of this." "Neither did I," he said. She leaned in, kissed his cheek, soft, warm, lingering, just long enough to make him wish she hadn't stopped. Then she was out the door, the suitcase rolling behind her, her figure growing smaller in the rear view as the car pulled away down the long, empty street. Lily watched from the window, silent now, her breath fogging the glass. "She'll come back," Michael said, trying to believe it. But as the day wore on and the house settled into its old familiar quiet, he found himself reaching for his phone more than once, only to stop short. The texts were still there, the memories, the warmth. But in the stillness it all felt distant, like maybe it had been a dream after all. The first day, he kept his phone close, charged. Screen brightness turned up. Every buzz, every chime made his heart skip, until it didn't. Until it was just the weather app or a spam call or nothing at all. Rachel had texted when she got home. "Safe and exhausted. Thank you for everything," he replied. "Glad you made it. Miss you already." She'd sent a heart, and that was it. By the second day, Michael stopped checking the phone as often. The silence wasn't loud yet, just unfamiliar. He threw himself into work, replaced a radiator, changed 4 sets of brake pads, fixed a transmission that should have been retired a decade ago. He stayed late at the garage, letting the clang of tools and the whir of machines fill the spaces where her voice used to be. Lily noticed. "Did you text Rachel today?" she asked one evening, curled on the couch with her drawing pad. "Not yet," he said, without looking up from the bills spread out on the kitchen table. "She's probably busy." Lily didn't respond, just went back to her sketching. 3 stick figures under a big sun again, but this time the figure in the middle looked a little smaller. Michael couldn't blame her. He felt it too. By the 5th day, the texts had slowed to a trickle, a photo of her office coffee, a quick, polite "Hope Lily's doing well." Nothing wrong, nothing mean, just less. He typed out a few responses, then deleted them. What was there to say? He didn't want to be the guy who begged, who needed. So he worked, harder than he needed to. He didn't sleep well, but he told himself it was the mattress. He skipped dinner twice, told Lily it was just grown-up stuff. She didn't press. He kept waiting for the ache to dull, for the sharp edge of hope to stop nicking his ribs every time the phone didn't light up. But in the quiet moments, when the shop closed, when Lily was asleep, when the town exhaled and he had nothing left to hide behind, he felt the silence. And it felt like losing something he hadn't meant to need. The door clicked shut behind her with a sound that echoed too loudly in the silence. Rachel set her suitcase down in the entryway of her apartment, the wheels thudding softly against the polished floor. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, neat, minimalist, untouched. Not a pillow out of place, not a single dish in the sink. She slipped off her shoes and padded through the living room. passing the perfectly arranged bookshelf and the framed prints she had chosen because they looked sophisticated. Now, they just looked cold. The city lights outside blinked against the window panes, casting long streaks across her white walls. She used to find comfort in that glow, in the hum of the street below, the buzz of life just outside her door, but tonight it felt distant, disconnected. She opened the fridge out of habit, closed it again. In the bedroom, she dropped her bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. Her inbox had exploded since she left. Deadlines, meetings, a campaign timeline that had somehow accelerated without her consent. She was back in the current, swept up before she'd even unpacked. But as she scrolled through emails and glanced at her calendar, she felt it, that low thrum of something off, something missing. Her eyes flicked to the photo taped to her mirror. It was Lily's drawing, the one with the three of them under the too big sun, Rachel's stick figure smiling wide. She'd brought it back with her, tucked between sweaters, though she couldn't say why. Now it was the only thing in the room that felt remotely alive. She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of traffic far below. She had everything here, a job people envied, a view people posted, a life people assumed meant something. But it didn't feel like hers anymore. Not after pancakes and Paw Patrol, not after snow forts and quiet walks, not after Michael's steady calm and Lily's wide-eyed trust. Rachel closed her eyes. And for the first time since coming back, she whispered the truth out loud to the empty room. "I don't want this anymore." The office was too bright. Rachel sat across from her boss in the corner conference room, floor-to-ceiling windows framing a skyline that sparkled like it had something to prove. A latte sat untouched in front of her, slowly going cold. Her boss, Jenna, sharp as ever, in a tailored blazer and 3-inch heels, was smiling. "Global strategy lead," Jenna said, tapping her pen against a leather-bound notebook. "You'd oversee both coasts. Travel, bigger teams, bigger clients. And the salary bump, well, you'll want to look at the numbers. It's substantial." Rachel nodded, the way she'd learned to. Calm, professional, not too eager. But her fingers were locked together in her lap, her stomach still tight from the word travel. "Timeline?" she asked, voice steady. "Fast. We want someone in L.A. by the end of next month." Of course, always fast, always forward. That was the rhythm here, momentum over meaning. Jenna leaned in. "You're the right person for this. Everyone knows it." Rachel smiled politely, made all the right noises. "Thank you. I'm honored. I'll think about it." But as she walked back to her office, the weight of the offer pressed in. She closed the door, sat at her desk, and stared at the city below. Cars moved like ants. People crisscrossed intersections with practiced urgency. She used to love that. The movement. The pace. Now it felt hollow. She picked up her phone without thinking, scrolling past work texts and calendar alerts until she found a photo. Lily holding a mug of cocoa, her cheeks flushed from the snow, eyes bright and wide. A second later, another photo, Michael, half laughing as he stood beside the crooked snow fort, gloves too big, heart on full display. Rachel set the phone down gently. The promotion would change everything. But so had one wrong number. She turned toward the window again, the skyline no longer gleaming. It just looked far away. Like something she used to chase. Like something she might be ready to let go of. Because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't asking what she could have. She was asking what she wanted to keep. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, mid-morning, just as Rachel was sifting through a pile of contracts and campaign mock-ups. It stood out immediately, not because it was fancy, but because it was clearly addressed by a child. The letters were big, uneven, and slightly slanted. Rachel Martin, with a tiny heart over the I. Her breath caught. She pushed aside her paperwork, slowly peeling the envelope open like it held something fragile. Inside was a folded piece of thick construction paper, soft at the corners from travel. Crayon lines peeked out from the edges. Rachel unfolded it. The drawing was unmistakable. Three stick figures standing side by side beneath a bright yellow sun and surrounded by red hearts. One figure was tall, with brown hair and a tool belt. The one in the middle had a dress and long dark hair that flew out to the side like wind was always blowing. And to the right, a little girl with curls and a smile so wide it stretched across her whole face. Above them, in bright purple crayon, family. Rachel pressed a hand to her mouth, the sting behind her eyes sudden and sharp. She stared at it for a long time, tracing each imperfect line like it was sacred. There was a note on the back written in careful, deliberate print. Dear Rachel, I miss you. Thank you for the snow fort and the pancakes and the talking. I hope you come back soon. You can have the bed next to mine if you want. Love, Lily. Rachel leaned back in her chair, the chaos of the office falling away. The sound of phones, the buzz of emails, it all blurred into background noise. Her world had narrowed to a single piece of paper in her hands. She thought of Maplewood, of pancakes in mismatched plates, of Michael's quiet steadiness, of Lily's giggle in the snow. And now this, a drawing, a word, family, not a title, not something earned by blood, but by being there, by showing up. Rachel folded the picture carefully and tucked it into her bag. Some things didn't belong on a desk. They belonged where decisions were made. Rachel stood in the center of her apartment, a half-filled suitcase open at her feet, the city skyline stretching wide behind her. The buzz of traffic below filtered through the windows, constant, indifferent. She used to find comfort in that noise. Now it just reminded her how easily you could be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. The offer letter sat untouched on the kitchen counter. She'd read it 5 times. Knew every line by heart, the title, the salary, the expectations. She could already hear the congratulations, the "you're so luckies," the champagne toasts in rooftop bars. But all she could see was Lily's drawing. Family. She crossed the room and opened the bottom drawer of her desk. Out came the old dented travel mug she hadn't used in months, a stack of worn notebooks, and a framed photo of a much younger version of herself grinning beside college friends she no longer spoke to. She paused, stared at it for a beat, then placed it face down on the desk. Rachel picked up her phone, thumb hovering over Jenna's number. Her heart thudded with a strange mix of certainty and fear. Then she dialed. "Rachel," Jenna answered quickly, cheerful and efficient. "I was just about to check in. Have you had a chance to look over the offer?" "I have," Rachel said, her voice steady. "It's generous, and I'm grateful." A pause. "But I'm going to pass." Silence crackled on the other end. "Pass?" Jenna echoed. "Is this about the travel? We can work something out. Remote options. Flexible weeks?" "It's not the travel," Rachel said softly. "It's everything. I've been chasing this version of success for so long, I forgot to ask if it still fits." Another pause, longer this time. "I see," Jenna said finally. "Well, that's unexpected, but I hope whatever's next brings you peace." Rachel smiled faintly. "Me too." She hung up, heart pounding, but lighter than it had been in weeks. She moved around the apartment deliberately now, packing her things with calm hands. Not because she was running away, but because for once she knew exactly where she was going. Home. The Maplewood welcome sign looked the same as before, slightly faded, tilting just enough to suggest it had braved one too many winters. Rachel slowed as she passed it, her car loaded down with boxes, suitcases, and a coffee she'd only half finished. Her GPS had long since gone quiet. She didn't need it this time. She knew the way. The streets were just as she remembered, wide and quiet, lined with modest homes, the kind where porches mattered and people waved at neighbors they actually knew. She rolled down her window, letting in the crisp, late winter air, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was passing through. She was arriving. The little rental house sat 2 streets over from the town square, with a sloping roof and a small fenced yard. Nothing like her city apartment. It didn't have a doorman or views of steel and glass, but it had something better, a front porch that begged for coffee on Sunday mornings and a driveway just wide enough to feel like permanence. She carried her first box to the porch herself, balancing it on her hip as she fumbled with the key. Just as she got the door open, she heard a voice behind her. "Need a hand?" Rachel turned. Michael stood at the edge of the yard, hands in his jacket pockets. That same quiet, steady presence she'd tried not to miss as much as she had. His smile was soft, a little uncertain, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to hope. She smiled back. "I'm not here for you," she said, setting the box down gently. "I'm here for me." Michael nodded slowly. "Good. That's the right reason. But," she added, stepping down the porch steps to meet him, "I'm not pretending you're not part of the reason I chose here." He looked at her for a long moment before saying, "Lily's going to lose her mind." Rachel laughed. "That's the plan." They stood there for a few more seconds, the quiet stretching between them like a shared promise. She wasn't running anymore. She was building something, and she was exactly where she wanted to be. The county fair arrived on a breeze of fried food and laughter, spreading out across the open field like a patchwork quilt of tents, rides, and wide-eyed kids with sticky fingers. It was Maplewood's biggest event of the year, and Michael had taken Lily every fall since she could walk, but this year felt different. This year, Rachel walked beside them. They didn't make a big deal out of it. No labels, no declarations, just easy steps, shared looks, and a kind of unspoken knowing that settled between them like the warmth of sunlight after a long stretch of gray. Lily tugged at Rachel's hand as they passed the funnel cake stand. "You have to try the one with powdered sugar and chocolate drizzle. It's the best. Daddy says it's too messy, but he always eats half of mine." Michael raised a brow. "Slander." Rachel laughed, handing over her fare tickets. "Two, please. I believe the child." They found a patch of grass near the hay bales and split the treat, Rachel managing to get powdered sugar on her nose, which made Lily giggle so hard she nearly fell over. There was something about it. The way they sat there, knees bumping, napkins fluttering in the breeze, that made Michael feel like the world had paused just for them. He glanced at Rachel, who was watching Lily with the kind of soft attention he remembered Erin having in her quietest moments. Not possessive, not performative, just present. Later, they wandered through the craft booths and corn maze, Michael carrying Lily on his shoulders when she got tired, Rachel pointing out the sky turning pink behind the Ferris wheel. As dusk settled in and the fair lights flickered on, they found themselves walking hand in hand, Lily in the middle, swinging their arms with all the carefree energy of someone who had decided this, whatever this was, made perfect sense. Rachel squeezed Michael's hand once. He looked over, saw the flicker of something calm and certain in her eyes. They didn't need to name it yet. They were in no rush. But in the quiet of the evening, under strings of glowing lights and the distant sound of carousel music, it felt like the start of something real. A new beginning, one they were building together. The house was quiet, filled with the kind of stillness that comes only after a long, full day. The faint hum of the dishwasher in the kitchen, the creak of floorboards settling in the cold, the gentle rhythm of the wind brushing past the windows. Upstairs, Lily yawned mid-sentence as Rachel pulled the blanket up to her chin. The girl had spent the afternoon running through the backyard, chasing fireflies, and insisting she could build a better snow fort next time. Now her eyelids fluttered, sleep tugging her down with every breath. Rachel brushed a curl from Lily's forehead and smiled. "Good night, Bug." "Night," Lily mumbled, already halfway to dreaming. Rachel lingered for a moment before turning off the lamp and heading into the hallway. Michael was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, that easy, familiar look on his face, part amusement, part awe. "She conked out fast," Rachel said, her voice low. "She always does after pretending she's not tired for 2 hours straight." He reached for her hand as they walked down the stairs together, fingers lacing with hers like it was the most natural thing in the world. In the living room, the fire in the hearth had softened to glowing embers. Rachel sank onto the couch beside him, tucking her legs beneath her. She glanced over, her face lit in the flickering light, and smiled. The kind of smile that carried the weight of everything they'd come through and the quiet peace of where they'd landed. "You know," she said, resting her head on his shoulder, "I still think about that first text sometimes. I just gotten off a call that made me question my whole life, and I typed that message without thinking. Wrong number. Right moment." Michael chuckled, squeezing her hand. "Best wrong number I ever got." She looked up at him, her eyes soft, full of gratitude and something deeper, something rooted. "Mine too." They didn't need more words. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of second chances, of unplanned beginnings, of something steady and real. And in that quiet night, what started as a digital mistake had found its way home, becoming love, family, and forever.